Welcome to Automotive EV. My name is Peter Willing and thank you for joining us. Today on EV Futures, we have three great speakers, people who are prepared to share their knowledge and insights as we're steering our way forward to a much greener environment. Staying with first names, I'm going to welcome Eman, who will also help co-chair, Kai, and also Isabel, who has plenty of knowledge that we can all lean on as well. Sorry, Isabel, thank you. So we'll start off with short introductions. Some will have slides, some won't, and then we'll open to the floor and also have a genuine panel discussion between ourselves on where we see the ways forward and how we can get there sort of quicker. So I'd like to hand over to you now, Eman, and thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, Sean. If you can help me with my slides. My name is Eman Martin. I'm responsible for Political Affairs and Government Relations within Bosch Group. I'm also engineer background and had lots of years in my back working in the hardware and software development for the automotive sector, specifically on the ICE technology. Until Sean brings the slides in, what really I wanted to speak about today is just set the scenes regarding the e-mobility in general, also the agenda of EVs, and what is actually the regulatory requirements to help the uptake of EVs, and as well as to see other solutions can bring us to the net carbon zero by 2035, or maybe even sooner by 2030. The one area which is definitely we believe in Bosch, we think EV is part of the solutions. It will help to have a free emission powertrain, especially reducing the carbon footprint in urban areas. And what also is interesting in EVs in comparison, actually, to the ICE technology, that we do see that the consumer demand is increasing, and also the uptake of EVs is getting more and more, if you like, from the demand perspective, higher. Here you can see a slide. Thank you. If we can go to the second slide, please, Sean. In the second slide, just will take you through that we have already more than millions and millions of applications. Actually started with the hybrid plug-in and also with the EVs. We are one of the biggest tier one suppliers in the automotive sector, and we have also from semiconductors to actually e-axle, even to the rolling chassis, all done by Bosch and other partners. This is definitely one of our core businesses, and we would like to see it flourish moving forward. Next slide, please, Sean. You also will see here that considering not only the passenger cars as a future for electrification, but actually also two-wheelers, as well as vans, some of the commercial vehicles models. I'm not sure I could agree that the electrification 100% could be acceptable for example, heavy duty, because I think that the weight is playing here a role, and I think that probably other technologies like hydrogen or fuel cell could be maybe a better option. And we can see in the next slide, there is a classification from our end about where we see the powertrain can be electrified. And you know, I'm very proud as Bosch to say that we are pioneers of inventing, if you like, the e-bike engine. And that has actually was developed from an automotive engineer who he thought, if I downsize the engine to be used for an e-bike, that would be great. And nobody believed him until one division took the idea, and now the business is over 500 million. Moving forward in the next slide, please, Sean. You will see here we obviously see that the uptake of EVs by 2030 at least will be more than 30%. But we have lots of challenges and as well as trends coming up into the market. So we will see, for example, new players. And we did see that with Tesla. As a disruptor, they actually, in my opinion, dictated the EV market and even accelerated the spread of EVs. We see different alliances coming to the market. You see the one-tier suppliers as a traditional supplies with the OEMs, but you will see Apple and Google also coming into this market and even building cars. The models are changing, especially with the new generation. 40% of the new generation don't have driving license. That will change the dynamic of transport. And when we were talking about transport in January 2020, we were talking about air quality. We were talking about the challenges we have with the banning ICE consultation by 2030X, until we had the COVID-19 challenge, which actually changed the whole transport and put it under microscope. And you could see here when we were saying about car sharing as one element, which actually could unleash the electrification market. But at the moment, the new regime of COVID doesn't encourage people actually to use mass. And we will see how that will be developed in the future, maybe if we find a vaccine. I really don't want to elaborate that much here. I just wanted to say, and maybe we can go to the end of the slides, is the electrification and EVs is a part of the solution, and is definitely a way of helping us in decarbonizing the fleet. But we have to consider running these electric vehicles with renewable energy to be able 100% to guarantee the road to net zero carbon. Else than that, if we consider wheel-to-wheel and we're still using coal and other sources of energy, we're definitely not going to reduce the carbon footprint. And also the electrification itself is not a silver bullet. There are other solutions needs to be considered for the mix to actually reduce CO2. You could see here, this is our assumption as Bosch, that, as I said, there will be a huge uptake of EVs, but we still see electrified powertrain, hybrid plug-in. They have to be a part of the solution. They have also an existent right to do so. And as I said, I know that there are lots of argument that most of the people don't use the electrified side of hybrid, but there is a possibility to do geofencing and actually control the way how people are using hybrid. I'm sure Kai will elaborate on that more. But also I would like to say, we see fuel cell and hydrogen is also a part of the solution, especially in the heavy-duty trucks. We're also talking about H2ICE. Maybe some of you didn't hear about it, but this is the way how we see, for example, that the combustion engine or auto engine, if you like, can be converted to be able to handle the intake of hydrogen. And actually, that could be a very cheaper solutions in comparison to fuel cell for the transition period and to help us to reduce the carbon footprint. I will pause here. And I'm happy to take questions afterwards and also ask my colleagues questions as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So it's over to you, Kai.
Thank you so much, Peter, and thank you so much, Eman, for setting the scene so nicely. Lots of things I would definitely agree with. I am here to represent ZF. ZF is an automotive supplier from beautiful Lake Constance, but you'll find us all around the world. If you've not been to Lake Constance, please change that in the near future. What do? We provide solutions for all kinds of electric applications, from e-bikes indeed as well, to Formula E, from PES cars to heavy duty. So really, the future is electric, but the future is not only electric, and the future is not necessarily always fully electric. And as there is a discussion going on at the moment, also not only in the UK, on a possible ban of plug-in hybrids as part of the revised climate strategy, and also in Europe as part of the Green Deal, a possible discussion on the ban of the combustion engine, I'd like to stress today the role we see for plug-in hybrids and why we believe they are key for both electrification and climate protection. I hope you can see the slides. If not, please let me know. Market acceptance, if we want to make electrification a success, it's not about convincing early adopters. It's not about bringing electrification to 20% of the market. It's about bringing electrification to the mass market. And what we see is that currently, and we think for the foreseeable future, who actually drives a fully electric car? Those with more than one vehicle in the household. Who drives a hybrid? Those people that have one car. And I think these are the people we need to reach if we want electrification to really be a success. Secondly, with a plug-in hybrid, if you have sufficient range, and that's something I hope we'll be discussing later, if you have sufficient range, 80 kilometers, 50 miles, however you want to name it, you can do pretty much all your daily driving in fully electric mode. 90% of all trips are below 40 kilometers. So really a plug-in hybrid, if you use it correctly and if it's applied in the correct way, can be a fully electric car in daily driving and still allow you to see granny on the weekend or go to Spain on holiday. In terms of the climate impact, if you look at the life cycle impact, now, I think fully electric cars for the urban transport will be unbeatable. So let me make this very clear here. So I think for small urban vehicles, full electrification is the way to go. If you look at long-range vehicles, plug-in hybrids are fully comparable with long-range battery electric vehicles, just because of the impact of the battery. Let's not argue about individual numbers here, but Ricardo has just done a study for the European Commission and came to a very similar conclusion. Not only that, let's imagine two scenarios. One is a fully BEV world. In a fully BEV world, you need a lot of charging stations, and you need to lay out your charging network for that horror weekend in August where everybody goes on holiday. If, however, you have the alternative scenario of a 50 BEV and 50% plug-in hybrid world, and if you have correct plug-in hybrids that you use well and that are laid out in a good way with a good range, then actually you can open a new path to climate neutrality via synthetic fuels. I don't believe for one second that synthetic fuels are the way to save the combustion engine. We will not have enough synthetic fuels to save all passenger cars and keep them ICE. That will not happen. But you may open a real valid path to climate neutrality if you look at the fuel needs, the much reduced fuel needs in a 50-50 scenario, 50 BEV, 50% plug-in hybrids. Last point, but important in my eyes, we need to make this transformation an industrial success. Climate policy will only be sustainable politically if we make it a transformation, not an industrial disruption. And that's also where plug-in hybrids, in my eyes, are absolutely key, because they combine, the electric motor with the metal part and allow a transformation of value chains and plants. This is the way how we can get plants into the future and safeguard employment and get societal buy-in for ambitious climate targets. If we want to disrupt, I think we will have disruptive tendencies, not only socially, but also politically, and ambitious climate policies risks being challenged. Last point I want to make, of course, we need to make plug-in hybrids better. We now have a first generation of plug-in hybrids on the market. Some of them, frankly, are not what a plug-in hybrid should be. They are not the answer. They have insufficient range and they are charged insufficiently. This needs to change. Let me be very clear here. So we need longer ranges. We need improvement in charging infrastructure. We are working on solutions that plug-in hybrids automatically change to electric driving when entering environmental zones. We need to set the right incentives via taxation so that people really have an incentive to charge and not only to fill up the car. And it's not possible that those who have a company car get a fuel card but don't have a charging card. So there are some low-hanging fruits we need to implement so that the climate promise of a plug-in hybrid can be realized. If you want to have this explained in a more fun way, well, it's German humor after all. So I don't know how much fun it is, but if you want some German humor on this, check out my LinkedIn profile. We've made a little movie about this, but please be warned, it's German humor. And with that, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kai. That was interesting. I'm going to watch the video in a while. Thank you, and over to you, Isabel. Thank you.
So thank you, Peter. And I do not believe it when they say Germans don't have a sense of humour. I think they do have an extremely good sense of humour. And Kai, I've been to Lake Constance many times, and you're absolutely right. It's really beautiful and gorgeous down there. So my name is Isabel Sheldon. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer for Britishvolt. We are the new kids on the block in battery manufacturing. We're planning to bring 30 gigawatt hours worth of battery manufacturing capacity to the UK, starting with start of production in 2023 with our first 10 gigawatt hours, ramping up to 30 gigawatt hours by 2027. Now, unfortunately, I don't have slides. It didn't make it across, so I'm going to have to wing it and do this verbally. I've been in the battery industry in EVs for coming up to about 20 years now. And I've worked across all of the different types of powertrains, from mild hybrids through plug-in hybrids, fuel cell electric vehicles, and full battery electric vehicles. So there isn't much I haven't seen and done in the electrified powertrain markets, and I've certainly got a lot of the scars to show that I've served my time in this industry. I think it's really interesting, and I think Eman sets out an interesting landscape moving forwards. We're reaching a tipping point in electrification of all types. I think that the future is going to be battery electric vehicle, and I have some specific reasons for that. Although, having said that, fuel cells, plug-in hybrids and mild hybrids, they're not the enemy of the battery industry because they're complementary technologies. Wherever you have a fuel cell vehicle, you generally have a battery going along with it. So I think that if we do eventually go to fuel cells, that will be very good for the battery industry. It will change the type of battery that we make, but we'll still be making plenty of batteries. So I think the future is very strong. And certainly one of the things with the battery electric vehicle market that we have to be very, very careful of is that the embedded CO2 emissions are managed properly and that we have ethical sourcing of materials. And it's very much part of Britishvolt's business plan moving forwards. So we intend to have the greenest batteries in the world, and I know that's a very big statement for someone to make, but central to our business plan is the use of renewable energies to make not only the battery cells, but also to become vertically integrated into the active materials supply chain too, and do all of that in the UK. And that will be quite a big change to the long supply chains that we see stretching around at the moment in the embedded carbon, because we are generally exporting our carbon problem to other countries because we're having the energy intensive processes done in places like China, and their power grid is generally dominated by coal. So concertinaing that supply chain and making it more localized here in Europe is going to be critical, along with the increase in renewables, of which we're really good in the UK because we're coming up to about 50% energy mix being renewables on the UK grid. And we're getting greener all the time. We'll phase out all of our coal-fired power stations by 2025. And as we build out the offshore wind turbine and the solar generation in the UK, and don't forget that the UK probably has as much wind as the rest of the world put together. Certainly where I live, it's quite windy at the moment. So we have world-leading wind energy generation just offshore in UK waters. So we need to tie up the greenness of our grid, the availability of renewables, shortening supply chains, leveraging the chemical industry in the UK, which has been strong for several hundred years and maintains its strengths on the global market, and also to capitalise on the infrastructure that's been put into the UK by the British government, in particular with the Faraday Battery Challenge and the Faraday Institution, UK Innovate and the UK Battery Industrialisation Centre. These are all facilities and capabilities that we can leverage as a British company to accelerate our development plans and get into production as quickly as possible. I think that this is going to be a very interesting discussion. I have the notoriety of being the first person in the world to commercially sell plug-in hybrids back in 2005, and there were conversions of Toyota Priuses. So I'm looking forward to the conversation with Kai, because that's actually where I started my career before I embarked on my battery electric vehicle crusade around Europe. So thank you very much.
Thank you. If we could stay with you for a minute, what are the biggest challenges to starting up a battery plant? That's a question that came in, so I thought I would use it.
So I think if you look at the scale of the challenge in front of us, it's quite large, and you need to have the right people around you to be able to deliver on that promise. And we've been building out a world-leading team, not only in battery technology and material science, but also in the construction of the facility. We will be building the 4th largest building in the UK, the 16th largest building in the entire world. It's something like 80% the footprint of the Vatican City in Rome. So that kind of task is not to be underestimated. And if you actually look at the UK, I mean, we've surveyed 100 possible locations, 40 potential sites. There are only very, very few sites in the UK where you can put a building up that's 250 metres square and 30 metres tall, 250,000 square metres. It's a sizable facility. So access to capital and funding is important, access to technology is important, and as I've already mentioned, becoming vertically integrated into the supply chain and participating in the active material manufacturing is also critically important. So having a site of sufficient size to co-locate all those manufacturing processes is quite a challenge. So yes, it is a big challenge, but we've got a team in place that's more than capable of rising up to that.
Okay, any questions, Eman, you want to bring up?
Yes, I have actually a question to Kai. So you had a very interesting presentation and you mentioned synthetic fuel. Nevertheless, it could be a part of the solution. It could be helpful in case of using hybrid plug-in. So really would be interesting from my opinion. You mentioned we wouldn't have the quantity to actually run the ICE engines with synthetic fuel. Where do you see the synthetic fuel exactly role? And secondly, it was really interesting in your presentation, you mentioned that the hybrid plug-in shouldn't be demonized, especially now in the UK. As you know, there's a consultation going on about ending ICE and hybrid plug-in sales by 2030X, that could be even 2030. So that question probably to both of you. And what would be your recommendation to the government? Because obviously that will affect exactly what we're trying to say, probably will empower what Isabel is saying.
Thanks so much. Indeed, I mean, while electrification is really a key path for climate reduction, I think what is clear, if you look at the numbers, also look at the numbers you showed, but even more so if you look at the vehicle park, the vehicle stock, not just the new vehicles, we will need other solutions besides electrification to really make a dent in overall emissions. So in that sense, I think renewable fuels, low carbon fuels are really a no regret option. And I think we should use the high abatement costs we have in the transport sector to actually pull them in. And who knows if in 2050 we'll use them for PES cars, maybe not, but we can use PES cars and the abatement costs here to pull them in and create a business case for the fuel industry. And I think that's where really the win-win could lie. And again, it's a no regret option for climate. and it's also a good option, certainly, for the industrial transformation. On the UK consultation, we have full transparency. We have participated in that. We have also maybe been inspired to come out with our little movie here because of the UK consultation. Again, we fully accept what democratic governments decide, so there's no issue there. But of course, we try to give a certain view, and that's why we participate in the consultation. And we think it would be misguided to ban plug-in hybrids. Why is that? Because we'll need them to bring electrification broadly into the market, because they allow a successful industrial transformation. And we should make plug-in hybrids future-proof rather than banning them. I think that's how we get successful industry and successful climate together.
Can I add a point into that? I think there's two additional elements that are coming to this, especially when you look at the biofuels. So firstly, Eman, I completely agree with you that long-range road haul transport of large goods vehicles, the solution that makes sense is hydrogen fuel cells. Simply because if you're trying to go a long way, you just find an interesting way of carrying loads of batteries around and not much product, so it doesn't make sense. There's a thermodynamic issue in producing the fuel and delivering it. You end up with 25% efficiency if you go from generation of hydrogen to delivery to the road wheels, which is a significant problem if you don't have access to green energy to generate hydrogen. And with the cost of energy being fairly high at the moment, it doesn't really make economic sense for passenger cars. It's much better to use a battery where you've got about 70 to 75% efficiency from delivery to the vehicle to the roads. So I think that long-haul road transport has definitely got to go fuel cells. In the intermediate period, it will probably need to go biofuels, because I think diesel will become socially unacceptable in, not in the next sort of 5 years, but probably in the 10-year time frame. We're going to need to have an alternative method of powering our HGV fleet. But of course, biofuels has an important part to play in aviation, because it becomes a stepping stone sustainable fuel to decarbonise the aviation sector. So we can't fly all the planes, transport all the goods and feed all the people with the amount of biomass that we have available today. So that's one problem. I think that the plug-in hybrid debate and the banning of internal combustion engines is a really interesting topic. The reason we have a bit of a dichotomy in the battery electric vehicle market at the moment is that we're all chasing those headline figures. Our friend Elon over in the US has set a very high bar indeed. And this is what Britishvolt are going to bring to the automotive manufacturers, an opportunity to compete on an equal footing with improved battery technology. But still, we're ending up carrying more range than we actually need. So if you're going out and buying a vehicle that can do 500 kilometers worth of range, but your daily commute, you're only ever using sort of 50 to 80 kilometers of that, one will start to question the wisdom of buying such a high range vehicle. So I think one of the questions that I think will be asked is, how do we reduce the size and the cost of the battery pack? Well, actually, I think one of the ways of doing that is to get to the point where the penny has dropped within the market, that you don't need to have a 500 kilometer range vehicle when your commute or your sort of average usage is probably only ever a maximum of about a third of that. So producing batteries with smaller capacities and using the cheaper materials. So instead of looking at those high nickel materials that tend to be really expensive and the cost of nickel will go up from where it is at the moment, looking at some of the low capacity alternatives such as sodium-ion technology or lithium-ion phosphate, these can be easily integrated into electric vehicles and produce a lower cost, lower range vehicle for those people that don't need that 500 kilometers worth of range. And I think that impinges on the plug-in hybrid argument.
Absolutely. That would bring us actually to another question. Absolutely, I get the point. But when we look into the consumer behavior, and with EVs or with hybrid plug-in, both of them, the consumers, they have different behavior. So one of them, of course, the hybrid plug-in, there's a stat, Kai, saying 95% of the people actually don't use the electric side of hybrid, and actually mostly they're using petrol. And that is why the policymakers are, deciding against it. So that is a question probably for Kai. And the other question would be on the EV side is obviously this range anxiety, what people majority have, and actually preventing them from buying EVs, although they have the use case, to have an EV. So we'll start with Kai. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Indeed, I mean, that's exactly where we see the role of plug-in hybrids. Yeah. So against range anxiety, and then look at what do people actually need in daily commutes. And so the first generation of plug-in hybrids is not sufficient, but maybe we don't need the long-range battery electric vehicle. So this is where we see the next generation of plug-in hybrids having a really interesting role to play, with real-world electric driving of 80, maybe 100 kilometers, allowing you fully electric driving in daily commutes, as Isabel also mentioned, but still without range anxiety, giving you the certainty that you can go on holidays in that vehicle, and that we reach those consumer groups that have one vehicle. And frankly, there are many of them. So, but let's make the plug-in hybrid better. And that's in a way what we have tried to, in our little consultation response to the UK government, try to give some ideas on how we can make the plug-in hybrid better. How we can, if you have a tank card but no charging card, hey, that's not okay. That's not okay. Let's change that. Let's find smart incentives that people actually want to charge. Let's improve the charging infrastructure. But again, let's not judge hybrids based on the first generation. I think we would come to a wrong conclusion.
Isabel.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think the range anxiety thing has hung around for an awful long time. I'm an EV driver, and I was thinking about this the other day, how range anxiety was a big thing at the end of the noughties, and if you're going to buy an electric vehicle, you're going to be stuck at the side of the road at some point. And with a modern electric vehicle, it really isn't the case. Even my vehicle, I bought the low-range Audi e-tron. It's got realistic about 145 miles range. That was certainly the way I drive it. And it's really not been a problem. I've recently been to South Wales, and I had to stop and charge. I had a sandwich and a cup of tea. By the time I finished, it was ready to go again. And the charger station availability does need to improve, because they're not always in the locations where you need them to be. But really, the thing that hit me was how much less time I spend putting energy, so be it petrol or electrons, into my vehicle. I've probably used fast chargers since I've had this particular car on maybe 6 occasions in 6 months. And the rest of the time it charges overnight at home. In the same period of time with my internal combustion engine cars I've owned in the past, I'll be at those petrol stations at least once every 2 weeks. So the physical amount of time I spend putting energy in my car and waiting to finish doing that has been cut down dramatically by owning an EV, because it simply charges up whilst I'm asleep in bed. And when I wake up in the morning, it's always full. It's always ready to go. I never have to worry about it. So I think that the range anxiety, combined with the cumulative time that you spend filling something up with energy, I think they're both problems that we tend to overemphasize. And certainly most people I know that have taken the step to EV have said, I was worried about range, but after a month driving the vehicle, I realized it wasn't a factor.
Great. Peter, do you have any questions, or shall I keep going?
There is another one that came in. Electrification has a big question about complexities with infrastructure. Can the same be said with hydrogen?
That's probably a question. I could take that. So the hydrogen infrastructure, first of all, we really need to differentiate between, is it the gray hydrogen? Are we talking about green hydrogen? And the current situation is, to be bluntly honest, that the mix of the hydrogen will be based on gas. And a percentage of 1.5% will be able to be from the green hydrogen, or if you like, renewable energy, because at the moment, as also Isabel touched on it before, we don't have, we have the capability to grow, but until now, we don't have the capacity actually to satisfy all of it from the green side of it. The infrastructure to be set up for the hydrogen is not complicated. If you think about it, especially in the UK, you have a gas grid. And what you need to do, you need to convert the gas grid to hydrogen. That's why hydrogen is attractive for the UK. That's why actually we are promoting hydrogen and appealing to the government to consider the hydrogen as one of the solutions moving forward to reach the net carbon zero. So in the UK perspective, you will have, from the infrastructure side of things, already about 40% of the cost covered, because you have already a gas grid which can be converted easily to hydrogen.
Can I raise a point on that? With the gas grid that we've got at the moment, it will only operate at certain pressures. So to change our gas usage for our heating and our cooking to hydrogen, I absolutely agree with you. But you're not going to be able to deliver hydrogen at the pressures required to fill the tank on a fuel cell vehicle. You would need to have additional compression to be able to achieve that. Just simply the cost of upgrading the gas grid to cope with those pressures would be extremely expensive.
Yeah, but this is already available, Isabel. And if you look to, I don't know if you had a chance to look to the Daimler hydrogen or fuel cell, because there's a difference between H2 ICE and fuel cell. It's already actually done in a very nice way, and it's very compressed as well. And it is not dangerous, because I know that probably the next question would be asked, well, actually hydrogen, when it's compressed, is dangerous, but it's not at all. And I will encourage everyone to do that. Nevertheless, I have to say something. It's still not cheap. The technology is expensive, and we are far from there to say it would be commercialized in a higher way. I think the hydrogen is attractive for the heavy duty trucks. And for sure, you can hear about Nikola and other also disruptors coming into the market in that perspective. For the passenger cars, I'm not sure is attractive, to be honest. I don't think so. I think if it comes, it would be in the SUVs and above, but not in a smaller vehicles for sure. That has to be electrified anyway.
Yeah, the other thing that people forget about fuel cell vehicles is it's not just about the fuel cell stack in the tank, it's the balance of plant you need on the vehicle to make it all work, and you still have a battery there.
Yes.
So it's not the low-cost solution. Even when it gets to scale, it will not be a low-cost solution. I think the current view of how battery packs need to become less expensive to compete with internal combustion engines, that's actually an easier thing to deal with than trying to integrate fuel cells at scale.
I don't agree with that, but I will leave that for another discussion. I think that the you have two solutions there. You have the ICE, which is already actually a solution BMW started with 5 years ago, where they actually really converted the combustion engine, especially the auto engine, to have an intake of hydrogen. So you need a hydrogen tank, which then the cost of it is about 60% minus from the fuel cell. But as I said, this is a topic we could take it, Isabel, maybe bilaterally. I think I don't want, because this is today is really more focused on EVs rather than H2 ICE or whatever. So my other question, if you don't have any questions from the audience, is really, is it about transformation? And it is about the industrial strategy and about the government support moving forward to actually help the industry to achieve the uptake by wherever 2035 or 2030. Do we think that the government is doing enough to help you two and others to get to the target, or do you think there are more needs to be done and we're not finished yet? Wherever who would like to pick up.
Can I go first? I'll go second.
I mean, I'm just a guest in this wonderful country in which you live. So in that sense, I think I would prefer to speak generally about governments with an S rather than a specific government. But well, in our eyes, you know, of course, again, governments are free, democratic majorities are free to ban the combustion engine, ban hybrids. They can do that, but no, that wouldn't be our preferred way. Let's make things better so that consumers actually want it, and there's a consumer pull. Because EVs are great to drive, so you know, let's make them better. Let's improve the charging infrastructure. The plans for charging infrastructure in most countries actually at par with the verbal ambition of many governments? I'm not so sure. I think we'll need much more of it. And again, you know, maybe in some very urban areas, we should have no problem. But if you look at some rural parts of remote parts of Europe, I think we have a huge challenge to really get electrification, pure electrification, into the mass market. So no, we would want more focus on that. And we would also encourage more focus on trying to identify win-wins for climate and the industrial transformation. I don't want to talk about plug-in hybrids again, but let's look at where are the technologies that can transform a plant from today into the future, from this boring metallic gray that no politician likes, which is actually much more interesting maybe, to that bright green future that politicians talk about. That's the transformation we need, and we need more than ambition and tighter targets to get there.
So if I can pick up on the industrial strategy piece, we have a big problem in the UK, and the government support is part of that problem. If I gaze across the English Channel to our friends and colleagues in Europe, you have what's called IPCEI, Important Projects Common European Interest. And that's where the state aid rules are being pushed to one side because this is strategically important for the European Union to develop domestic battery manufacturing. And the numbers that are going into some of those companies are staggering. You know, we're talking in excess of 400 million euros in support mechanisms being put in place for some of these companies at the same scale that we're looking at building. Whereas in the UK, we have no equivalent to that. There is not a level playing field with the European Union as far as investment into the industrial strategy, in particular for batteries in the UK. And that is an issue that needs to be addressed because it just simply makes our business case significantly harder and reduces our competitiveness. So we have an open call to the government to step up to the plate and to put a program in place that levels that playing field up. The European Union has talked about level playing field as far as the UK is concerned on state aid. And I'm afraid it needs to work the other way as well. We need to make sure that the UK government is providing the same stimulus packages in the UK as is available in the European Union. And that's important because whilst you're looking at a business case for setting up a battery manufacturing, it looks far more attractive to go and do it abroad. Whereas in the UK, when you're talking to government, you have to go to a website and fill out a form. If you're talking to any European government about building a battery facility, the conversation is more like, how much do you need us to help you with and to support you to be able to do that? So completely different approach in the UK compared with the European Union. And that needs to be fixed, and it needs to be fixed fast. And at the moment, I wouldn't want to be in any government because of the COVID problems and the decisions they've had to take, some of which are extremely painful. So I'm full of sympathy for anybody in charge who's having to make those difficult decisions. But we have to look to the future, and we have to make sure that the UK is actually looking forwards and building on its promises rather than disappearing in retreat.
If I could just come in for a minute, I'll make sure I'm not on mute. One question, well, there's a few coming, which we're not going to be able to cover them all. Lithium has been found in Cornwall. Is there a potential to exploit this and really shorten the supply chain for Britishvolt?
So actually, I was having quite a few conversations about exactly this subject earlier today. So yes, the lithium resources in Cornwall need to be exploited. I think they're finding more and more as they dig deeper and deeper. which is really good news because it means that we don't need to ship this material all the way around the planet to get into batteries built in the UK. There are conversion processes, the spodumene or the brine comes up and you extract the lithium from it. You then need to, you create lithium carbonate, you may need to convert that to lithium hydroxide. These conversion processes also need to take place in the UK, because if the conversion processes aren't here in the UK, we could be in the position of digging it out of the ground in Cornwall, sending it halfway around the world to be converted, and then sending it back to the UK. So as long as we have, and this is tied into the industrial strategy question, as long as we have the investment from private industry and government in those conversion processes in the UK, then we can end up with a really short supply chain and we can take a lot of embedded carbon out of that supply chain. So yes, in effect.
Thank you. I'm afraid we've run out of time, which is really sad because this could have gone on for a long time. So really thank to all of you, to Eman, to Isabel and to Kai. I suppose, Isabel, you won't confirm where you're going to build in the UK yet.
I'm afraid we can't confirm that. We have an MOU with the South Wales government to look at the site down there. But as anybody knows, when you're building a facility, you have site due diligence to do, and there could be planning problems. We could find a Roman villa in the middle of the site, buried at depth, and that particular site being an ex-RAF base, there could be ordnance that's been buried, as happened during the Second World War quite often. So there's no way at this stage we can confirm the location, but Wales is one of a number of sites that we've looked at, and we'll continue to look at those parallel sites.
I knew you wouldn't answer it really, but I had to ask. But thank you all very much, and thanks for enlightening me a little bit more on the plug-in hybrid situation, because I think with what you're talking about, it changes the face of what people are not using plug-in hybrids correctly over here, and where there's chance. So thank you all. Sorry we're having to finish, and hope to see you again. This will be repeated, but not this particular panel, but this will be repeated as a 7th of December to 11th of December Automotive EV Global Week, or Global Automotive EV Week. So expect an invite from us soon. Thanks very much. And I've just gone over, I shouldn't have done. Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.